The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene offers insight into the dynamics of power and how it can be gained, maintained, and utilized to maneuver through different situations life may throw at you. For the next couple of weeks, enjoy these dynamic illustrations and short stories that will spark your metamorphic fix. So let's begin.
Law number 1. Never outshine the master. Once upon a time, there was a young man named John who was just starting out in his career. John was ambitious and determined to succeed, but he quickly found that the world of business was cutthroat and competitive. He struggled to get ahead, always seeming to be one step behind his rivals. One day, John stumbled upon a book called The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. He began reading it and was immediately captivated by the first law, never outshine the master. The law stated that in any organization or hierarchy, it is important to never overshadow your superiors. This could lead to jealousy, resentment, and even retaliation. Instead, it is best to stay in the shadows, be humble, and let your boss take credit for your accomplishments. At first, John was skeptical. He had always been taught to work hard and stand out, to be the best at whatever he did. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that there was wisdom in this law. He began to see examples all around him of people who had failed to follow it and suffered the consequences. So John decided to put the law into practice. He started to tone down his achievements, giving credit to his boss instead of taking it for himself. He made sure to never be too successful or ambitious in front of his superiors. He even started dressing more conservatively, avoiding flashy clothes or accessories that might draw attention to himself. At first, John's colleagues didn't notice the change. But gradually, they began to see him in a new light. He seemed more dependable, more loyal, more focused on the company's success rather than his own. His boss, in particular, began to trust him more and more, giving him important tasks and even promoting him to a higher position. John was amazed at how well the law had worked for him. He realized that by staying in the shadows and letting his boss take the lead, he had gained more power and influence than he ever could have by trying to outshine his superiors. He had learned the importance of subtlety, of playing the long game, of knowing when to hold back and when to step forward. In the end, John became one of the most successful executives in his company. He had mastered the first law of power and was now ready to tackle the other 47. But he never forgot the lesson he had learned, that sometimes the best way to gain power is to let others have it first. So remember, the first law from the 48 Laws of Power states that never outshine the master. It advises people to avoid appearing more intelligent, capable, or successful than their superiors, as it may threaten their position and cause resentment. Instead, one should strive to make their master look good and feel superior, as it will earn their favor and protection. This law is a cautionary tale about the dangers of overt ambition and the importance of respecting hierarchies in the pursuit of power. Law number 2. Never put too much trust in friends, learn how to use your enemies. Once upon a time, there was a small kingdom ruled by a wise and just king named Leon. He had a large and loyal army, but he knew that one day he would have to face a powerful neighboring kingdom that was determined to conquer his land. So, King Leon decided to put into practice the second law of power, never put too much trust in friends, learn how to use enemies. He knew that this law was essential to survival, as even the closest allies could turn against him in times of war. He understood that it was important to always be one step ahead of his enemies, to know their weaknesses and to use them to his advantage. One day, King Leon received a message from the neighboring kingdom. The message was a warning, stating that the kingdom was planning to invade his land and take over his throne. King Leon knew that he had to act quickly, but he was not sure who he could trust. He decided to put his trust in a man named Jack, who had been his friend for many years. Jack was a skilled warrior and had fought alongside King Leon in many battles. The king thought that Jack was loyal and would do anything to protect the kingdom. But Jack had other plans. He had been secretly plotting with the neighboring kingdom to overthrow King Leon and take his place on the throne. When he heard that the kingdom was planning an invasion, he saw it as the perfect opportunity to put his plan into action. King Leon was devastated when he found out about Jack's betrayal. He had put too much trust in his friend and had not learned how to use his enemies. He knew that he had to act quickly if he wanted to save his kingdom. The king decided to seek help from an unlikely source, the neighboring kingdom's greatest enemy, a powerful and feared warlord named Marcus. King Leon knew that Marcus had a deep hatred for the neighboring kingdom and would do anything to see them defeated. He sent a messenger to Marcus with an offer: if he would help defend King Leon's kingdom against the invading army, he would be given a large sum of gold and be allowed to keep any land he conquered in the neighboring kingdom. Marcus was intrigued by the offer and decided to accept. He sent a large army to help King Leon defend his kingdom. The two armies met on the battlefield, and after a long and bloody battle, they emerged victorious. King Leon learned an important lesson that day, that it is better to use enemies to your advantage than to put too much trust in friends. He knew that he could never let his guard down, and that he would always have to be one step ahead of his enemies. In the end, King Leon's kingdom was saved, and he became known as one of the wisest and most successful kings in all the land. He had learned the value of using enemies to his advantage and had put into practice the second law of power. The moral of the story, as stated in law number 2 from the 48 laws of power, is never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. This law advises people to be cautious of blindly trusting friends, as they may betray or disappoint you. Instead, it recommends utilizing enemies as they can provide valuable insights and opportunities for growth. By using enemies strategically, one can turn their weaknesses into strengths and gain power over them. This law is a reminder of the importance of discernment and the need to be strategic in relationships to succeed in the game of power. Law number 3. Conceal your intentions. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a young prince named Alexander. He was the heir to the throne, and everyone expected great things from him. But Alexander grew up and became arrogant and haughty, and he believed that he could do anything he wanted without consequence. One day, Alexander came across a book that talked about the third law of power: conceal your intentions. The book said that it was important to keep your plans and motives hidden from others, especially your enemies. If they knew what you were planning, they could use it against you. At first, Alexander scoffed at the idea. He believed that he was powerful enough to handle anything that came his way. But as time passed, he began to realize that there were people who were working against him, trying to undermine his authority and steal his throne. So, Alexander decided to put the third law of power into practice. He began to keep his plans and intentions hidden from everyone, including his closest advisors and family members. He would hold secret meetings and make deals behind closed doors, never revealing his true motives. At first, Alexander's subjects were confused by his behavior. They couldn't understand why he was being so secretive, and rumors began to spread that he was planning something nefarious. But as time passed, they began to see the wisdom in his actions. Alexander's enemies, who thought they had him figured out, were caught off guard by his sudden change in behavior. They didn't know what he was planning, and they couldn't predict his next move. This put Alexander in a position of power, as he was always one step ahead of his rivals. But as Alexander's power grew, so did his arrogance. He believed that he was invincible, and he began to make enemies out of even his closest allies. He started to trust no one, and he became paranoid that someone would try to take his throne. One day, a group of rebels rose up against Alexander, determined to overthrow him and take his place on the throne. Alexander was caught off guard, as he had never anticipated such an attack. His arrogance had blinded him to the reality of the situation. In the end, Alexander was defeated, and he was forced to flee his kingdom in shame. He had learned an important lesson, that while it was important to conceal your intentions, it was equally important to not let your arrogance blind you to the reality of the situation. Alexander's downfall was a cautionary tale, and his kingdom fell into chaos and disarray. But his legacy lived on. So remember, the fundamental principle of the third law is to conceal your intentions. This law advises people to be guarded about their plans and intentions, as knowledge is power, and giving away too much information can make one vulnerable. By keeping one's plans secret, they can maintain a sense of mystery and control, and be better prepared to counter any potential opposition. This law is a reminder of the importance of strategic thinking and the need to keep one's cards close to their chest in the pursuit of power. Law number 4. Always say less than necessary. In the land of Aragonia, there was a man named Marcus. He was a talented craftsman, and he dreamed of one day becoming the greatest blacksmith in the kingdom. But there was one problem. No one knew who he was. Marcus had grown up in a small village on the outskirts of Aragonia. He had never been to the capital city, and he had no connections or contacts in the royal court. He knew that if he wanted to achieve his dream, he would have to find a way to get noticed. One day, Marcus came across a book that talked about the fourth law of power: always say less than necessary. The book explained that people who talk too much often reveal too much about themselves, and that it was important to keep your words to a minimum, especially in the presence of those who could potentially harm you. Marcus realized that this law could be the key to achieving his dream. He knew that if he could find a way to get noticed by the royal court, he could become the greatest blacksmith in the kingdom. But he also knew that he had to be careful. He couldn't reveal too much about himself or his intentions. So, Marcus set out to put the fourth law of power into practice. He began to attend royal events and gatherings, where he would mingle with the nobility and try to make connections. But instead of talking about himself and his accomplishments, he would listen to others and ask questions about their lives and interests. At first, the nobility didn't take much notice of Marcus. He seemed like just another commoner, and they didn't see anything special about him. But as time went on, they began to notice something different about Marcus. He was always present at important events, and he never seemed to say much. People began to wonder who he was and what he was up to. They started to make up stories about him, that he was a spy for a rival kingdom, or that he was secretly plotting to overthrow the king. But Marcus remained silent, never confirming or denying any of these rumors. One day, the Queen of Aragonia was hosting a grand ball at the royal palace. It was the biggest event of the year, and all of the nobility were in attendance. Marcus was there too, dressed in his finest clothes and carrying a small package with him. As the night wore on, the Queen approached Marcus and asked him who he was and why he was there. Marcus remained silent for a moment, and then he opened the package he was carrying. Inside was the most exquisite sword that anyone had ever seen. The blade was made of the finest steel, and the handle was encrusted with jewels. The Queen was stunned. She had never seen such a beautiful sword before, and she asked Marcus where he had gotten it. Marcus simply smiled and said, "I made it." From that moment on, Marcus became known as the greatest blacksmith in the kingdom. His name was on everyone's lips, and people came from all over Aragonia to commission him to make their swords and armor. And yet, Marcus never revealed more than he needed to. He remained quiet and reserved, always letting his work speak for itself. In the end, Marcus had achieved his dream, and he had done it by following the fourth law of power. He had said less than necessary, letting his actions speak louder than his words. And he had become a legend in the kingdom of Aragonia, his name spoken with reverence for generations to come. As it states in law number 4, always say less than necessary. This law advises people to be mindful of the words they use and avoid over-communicating, as it can lead to misunderstandings and reveal too much information. By being economical with words, one can create a sense of mystery and allure, and leave others wanting more. This law is a reminder of the power of restraint and the importance of being deliberate with communication in the pursuit of power. Law number 5. So much depends on reputation, guard it with your life. In the kingdom of the southern rainforest, there was a queen named Amethyst. She was next in line to the throne, and she knew that one day she would have to rule the kingdom. But Amethyst had a problem: she was too trusting. Amethyst believed that everyone was inherently good and that people would always do the right thing. She trusted her advisors implicitly, and she never questioned their motives or intentions. But as she would soon find out, this kind of blind trust can be dangerous. One day, Amethyst's father, the king of the southern rainforest, fell ill. It was a sudden illness, and no one knew what had caused it. Amethyst was beside herself with worry. She loved her father deeply, and she couldn't bear the thought of losing him. As the days went on, the king's condition worsened. Amethyst's advisors began to whisper amongst themselves, and Amethyst could sense that something was not right. She decided to take matters into her own hands and investigate. Amethyst began secretly observing her advisors, watching their movements and listening in on their conversations. It wasn't long before she discovered that one of her advisors, a man named Lord Nathaniel, was plotting against her. Lord Nathaniel was a powerful man in Eldred, with a large following of loyalists. He had been scheming to take the throne for years and saw the king's illness as the perfect opportunity to strike. Amethyst knew that she had to act quickly if she was going to stop Lord Nathaniel. That's when she remembered the 5th law of power: so much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. Amethyst knew that she needed to protect her reputation if she was going to stop Lord Nathaniel's plot. She knew that if she made a false move or revealed her suspicions too soon, she could lose everything. So, Amethyst began to play a dangerous game. She pretended to trust Lord Nathaniel, all the while gathering evidence of his treachery. She would feign agreement with Nathaniel's plans, but then secretly work to undermine them. As the king's condition worsened, Lord Nathaniel grew bolder. He began to make public speeches, declaring that he would be the one to take the throne when the king died. Amethyst knew that she had to act fast. If Nathaniel's plan succeeded, there would be no going back. Unfortunately, the day arrived when the king passed away. Amethyst was devastated, but she knew that she had to act quickly if she was going to protect her kingdom. She summoned Lord Nathaniel to her chambers and presented him with the evidence of his treachery. At first, Nathaniel denied everything, but Amethyst was firm. She told Nathaniel that she knew everything and that he would be brought to justice. Nathaniel, realizing that the game was up, confessed everything. He revealed that he had been planning to kill Amethyst and take the throne for himself. Thanks to Amethyst's careful planning and reputation management, Lord Nathaniel was brought to justice. Amethyst took the throne as the rightful heir, and she ruled the southern rainforest kingdom with an iron fist. She had learned the hard way that blind trust could be dangerous, and that reputation was everything. In the end, Amethyst became known as one of the greatest rulers in the southern rainforest history. Her name was spoken with reverence for centuries to come, and she was remembered as the queen who had guarded her reputation with her life. So let's do a recap on law number 5 from the 48 Laws of Power, which states, so much depends on reputation, guard it with your life. This law advises people to be vigilant about their reputation, as it can make or break them in the game of power. By cultivating a strong reputation, one can gain the respect and admiration of others, and leverage this to their advantage. Conversely, a damaged reputation can be difficult to repair and can hinder one's ability to achieve their goals. This law is a reminder of the importance of integrity and the need to protect one's reputation at all costs in the pursuit of power. Law number 6. caught attention at all costs. In the bustling city of New York, there was a young woman named Ariana. She had just graduated from college with a degree in marketing, and she was eager to start her career. Ariana was a hard worker, and she quickly landed a job at a prestigious advertising firm. She was thrilled to be working with some of the top names in the industry, and she was determined to make a name for herself. But as Ariana soon discovered, the world of advertising was cutthroat. Everyone was competing for the same clients and the same projects, and it was a constant battle to stay on top. That's when she remembered the sixth law of power, caught attention at all costs. Ariana knew that if she was going to succeed in the world of advertising, she had to stand out from the crowd. Ariana decided to take a bold approach to her work. She started coming up with attention-grabbing ideas for her clients, things that no one else in the industry was doing. She would stay up all night brainstorming and then pitch her ideas to her boss the next day. At first, her colleagues were skeptical. They thought her ideas were too risky, too out there. But Ariana was persistent. She would make elaborate presentations, complete with mock-ups and prototypes, to convince her colleagues that her ideas were worth pursuing. Slowly but surely, Ariana's colleagues began to take notice. Her ideas were generating buzz, and her clients were thrilled with the results. Ariana was quickly becoming one of the most sought-after marketers in the city. But Ariana didn't stop there. She knew that to truly court attention, she had to do something that would make her stand out even more. So she decided to take a risk and launch her own marketing campaign. Ariana's campaign was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. She rented out billboards and subway stations, plastering them with bold, attention-grabbing ads for her clients. She launched a social media campaign that quickly went viral, and soon everyone in the city was talking about her. Her campaign was a huge success, and Ariana was quickly becoming a household name. But with all the attention came a new set of challenges. Her competitors began to take notice, and they started to copy her ideas. But Ariana was one step ahead. She continued to push the envelope, coming up with new, even more, outrageous ideas to keep her clients happy. And she continued to court attention, always looking for new ways to make herself stand out. In the end, Ariana's bold approach paid off. She became one of the most successful marketers in the city, and her name became synonymous with innovation and creativity. She had learned that in the cutthroat world of advertising, you had to be willing to take risks and court attention at all costs. And she had done just that, becoming a true power player in her industry. As law number 6 states, court attention at all costs. This law advises people to be bold and stand out from the crowd, as attention is a valuable currency in the pursuit of power. By drawing attention to oneself, one can gain influence and create a sense of importance, making it easier to achieve their goals. This law is a reminder of the power of charisma and the importance of being memorable in the pursuit of power. However, it also warns of the dangers of overstepping boundaries and the need to balance attention-seeking with subtlety and tact. Law number 7. Get others to do the work for you, but always take credit. In the kingdom of Azura, there lived a wise and just king named Eric. King Eric was beloved by his people for his fairness and generosity. He ruled with a gentle hand, but he also knew when to be firm. One day, a group of rebels rose up against the king, accusing him of being too soft and lenient. They argued that the kingdom needed a stronger ruler, someone who would be unafraid to use force to maintain order. King Eric was taken aback by these accusations. He had always believed in ruling with kindness and compassion, but he knew that sometimes, a ruler had to be strong to protect his people. That's when he remembered the 7th law of power: get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. King Eric realized that he needed to find a way to show his strength and authority without compromising his values. He decided to call upon the most respected knights in his kingdom. These knights were known for their bravery and loyalty to the crown. King Eric asked them to form a task force to take down the rebel leaders and restore order to the kingdom. The knights were hesitant at first. They knew that this was a dangerous mission, and they didn't want to risk their lives for something that wasn't their fight. But King Eric was persuasive, and he promised them great rewards if they were successful. So the knights set out on their mission. They battled the rebels for weeks, fighting bravely and with great skill. They finally defeated the rebel leaders and brought peace back to the kingdom. King Eric was grateful to the knights for their service, and he rewarded them with great riches and titles. He praised them for their bravery and skill, and the people of Azura hailed them as heroes. But King Eric didn't take all the credit for himself. He made sure to publicly praise the knights and thank them for their service. He knew that their success was his success, and he wanted everyone to know it. As time went on, King Eric continued to use this strategy. He would call upon his most trusted advisors and knights to take on important missions and tasks, and he would always make sure to publicly praise them for their successes. Through this strategy, King Eric was able to maintain his gentle rule while also showing his strength and authority. He became known as a wise and powerful ruler, respected by all who knew him. And the knights he had called upon became the most respected and powerful men in the kingdom. They were seen as the king's right-hand men, and their loyalty to the crown was unwavering. In the end, King Eric had learned an important lesson about power. He realized that sometimes it's not enough to be kind and compassionate. A ruler also needs to show his strength and authority, but he can do so without compromising his values by getting others to do the work for him and sharing the credit. As it states in Law Number 7, get others to do the work for you, but always take credit. This law advises people to delegate tasks to others while taking credit for their accomplishments, as it can help one appear more competent and increase their power. By positioning oneself as a leader who can inspire and delegate tasks effectively, one can gain a reputation for excellence and be more successful in the game of power. This law is a reminder of the importance of strategic thinking and the need to be cunning in delegating tasks and taking credit in the pursuit of power. Law number 8. Make other people come to you, or use bait if necessary. There lived a young and ambitious man named Sean. Sean had always dreamed of making it big in the business world, and he had worked tirelessly to climb the ranks of his company. But no matter how hard he worked, Sean always seemed to be stuck in the same position. He watched as his colleagues were promoted and given more responsibility, while he was left behind. One day, Sean decided to seek the advice of a mentor. He went to a successful businessman named Ray, who had built a fortune through his own company. Ray listened patiently as Sean explained his frustrations. And then, he shared with Sean the 8th law of power: make other people come to you, use bait if necessary. Ray explained that if Sean wanted to succeed, he needed to become more valuable to his company. He needed to offer something that no one else could, so that his bosses would see him as indispensable. He suggested that Sean identify a problem within the company and offer a solution. By doing so, he could make himself indispensable to the company, and his bosses would have no choice but to promote him. Sean took Ray's advice to heart, and he began to analyze the company's operations. He noticed that there was a major flaw in the way the company was managing its finances, and he devised a plan to fix it. He presented his plan to his bosses, who were impressed with Sean's insight and initiative. They implemented his plan, and it saved the company millions of dollars. Suddenly, Sean was no longer just another employee. He had become an essential part of the company's success, and his bosses saw him in a new light. He was quickly promoted and given more responsibility. But Sean didn't stop there. He continued to come up with innovative solutions to problems within the company, always making himself indispensable. But he never forgot the lesson that Ray had taught him. He knew that in order to succeed, he had to be valuable to others. He had to make them come to him, using bait if necessary. And so, he continued to offer innovative solutions to problems within his company, always looking for ways to make himself indispensable. He knew that in the game of power, there were no shortcuts. But by making himself invaluable, he had found a way to get ahead. As it states in Law 8 from the 48 Laws of Power, make other people come to you or use bait if necessary. This law advises people to be strategic in their approach to power, using bait and incentives to attract others to them. By positioning oneself as a valuable resource or desirable commodity, one can increase their power and influence, and create a sense of loyalty and dependence among others. This law is a reminder of the importance of strategy, and the need to be proactive in attracting and maintaining power in the pursuit of one's goals. However, it also warns of the dangers of becoming too dependent on others and the need to balance dependence with self-reliance. Law number 9. Win through your actions, never through argument. In the medieval kingdom of Aragon, there lived a powerful ruler named King Alfonso. King Alfonso was known for his cunning and strategic thinking, and he had managed to expand his kingdom through a series of successful military campaigns. One day, a rival kingdom threatened to invade Aragon. The king of the rival kingdom had a larger army and more resources, and many of King Alfonso's advisors suggested that he surrender and avoid a costly and bloody war. But King Alfonso refused to back down. He knew that his kingdom's survival was at stake, and he was determined to find a way to defeat his enemy. He remembered the 9th law of power: win through your actions, never through argument. King Alfonso knew that words alone would not be enough to convince his army to fight. He needed to show them that victory was possible, and he needed to inspire them to fight with all their might. And so, he took action. He organized his army, training them in new tactics and strategies that would give them an edge in battle. He invested in new weapons and technology, and he made sure that his soldiers were well-fed and well-rested. As the enemy army approached, King Alfonso did not waste his time arguing with his advisors. He knew that the only way to win was through action, and so he led his troops into battle. At first, the battle was fierce. The enemy army was larger and better equipped, and King Alfonso's troops were forced to fight with all their might just to hold their ground. But King Alfonso did not give up. He continued to fight alongside his troops, leading them with his own courage and determination. And slowly but surely, his tactics began to pay off. His soldiers started to gain the upper hand, taking down enemy after enemy. The enemy army, caught off guard by King Alfonso's innovative tactics, was unable to keep up. In the end, King Alfonso emerged victorious. His army had defeated the enemy, and Aragon had been saved from certain doom. But King Alfonso did not gloat or boast. He knew that his victory had come not through argument, but through his actions. And he knew that he had set an example for his soldiers and for all those who looked up to him. From that day on, King Alfonso continued to lead his kingdom with the 9th law of power in mind. He knew that words alone could not win battles, but that action and strategy could make all the difference. And he went on to become one of the most successful and revered rulers in all of Aragon's history, remembered for his bravery, his cunning, and his ability to win through his actions, never through argument. So remember, as it states in law number 9. Win through your actions, never through argument. This law advises people to avoid engaging in arguments or debates, as they are often unproductive and can damage one's reputation. Instead, it recommends focusing on actions and achievements, as they can speak for themselves and create a sense of respect and admiration. By letting actions speak louder than words, one can gain an advantage over competitors and be more successful in the game of power. This law is a reminder of the power of demonstration and the need to focus on results in the pursuit of power. Law number 10. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. Once upon a time, there was a young woman named Mackenzie who had just started her career in the film industry. She had big dreams and was determined to make it to the top. Mackenzie was smart, talented, and hardworking, but she soon realized that the film industry was also filled with a lot of negativity and drama. People were always talking behind each other's backs and trying to bring each other down. Mackenzie was determined not to let this negativity affect her, and so she turned to the 10th law of power, infection. Avoid the unhappy and the unlucky. She made a conscious effort to surround herself with positive and successful people, those who were focused on their goals and were supportive of others. She attended industry events and networking parties, but instead of trying to impress everyone, she focused on building relationships with the right people. One day, Mackenzie attended a film festival where she met a young director named Alex. Alex was full of energy and positivity, and he had a reputation for making great films. Mackenzie was drawn to him immediately, and they hit it off right away. Over the next few months, Mackenzie and Alex worked together on several projects, and their collaboration led to some of the most successful films of the year. They complemented each other's skills and personalities, and they both benefited from each other's success. Mackenzie soon realized that her success had come not just from her hard work and talent, but from her decision to surround herself with positive and successful people. She had avoided the unhappy and the unlucky, and in doing so, she had opened doors to opportunities she never thought possible. Years later, Mackenzie had become one of the most successful producers in Hollywood. She had won multiple awards and had a reputation for being one of the most positive and supportive people in the industry. She had built a network of successful and influential people who respected and admired her. Mackenzie knew that her success had come from her decision to follow the 10th law of power. She had avoided the negative and the toxic and had surrounded herself with people who lifted her up and helped her reach her goals. And she knew that this was a lesson that could be applied to any industry or aspect of life. Success comes not just from hard work and talent, but also from surrounding yourself with the right people. The right people can infect you with positivity and success, while the wrong people can infect you with negativity and failure. Law 10 from the 48 Laws of Power is an important law to always keep in mind. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. This law advises people to avoid associating with those who are unhappy or unlucky, as they can bring negative energy and bad luck into one's life. Instead, it recommends surrounding oneself with positive and successful people, as they can inspire and uplift one's spirit, and increase their chances of success. This law is a reminder of the importance of choosing one's company wisely, and being proactive in seeking out positive influences in the pursuit of power. Law number 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. Once upon a time, in a far-off land, there was a young prince named Ravi. Ravi was the son of the king and queen, and he had everything he could ever want. He had the best education, the finest clothes, and the most delicious food. But Ravi was not content with his life. He wanted more. He wanted to be respected and admired by the people of his kingdom, and he wanted to prove himself to his parents. And so, he turned to the 11th law of power, learn to keep people dependent on you. Ravi knew that the key to power was not just having money or a title, but having people depend on him. He wanted to be the person that everyone in his kingdom turned to for guidance and help. And so, he began to build relationships with the people in his kingdom. He offered to help farmers with their crops and to assist merchants with their businesses. He lent money to people who needed it and provided shelter to those who had none. Over time, Ravi became known as the prince who could solve any problem. People turned to him for advice and guidance, and they relied on him to help them in times of need. Ravi also knew that he needed to keep people dependent on him if he wanted to maintain his power. He made sure that he was the only person who could solve certain problems, and he would often delay helping people until they were desperate enough to come to him for help. As Ravi's power grew, he became more and more confident. He knew that he could solve any problem and that he was the most important person in the kingdom. But one day, a terrible drought hit the kingdom. The crops withered, and the people began to suffer. They turned to Ravi for help, but he was too busy with his own affairs to pay attention to their plight. As the people became more desperate, they began to turn against Ravi. They realized that he had kept them dependent on him for too long, and that he had become more interested in his own power than in helping his people. In the end, Ravi's power was taken away from him. He had learned the hard way that power comes with responsibility, and that keeping people dependent on you can be a double-edged sword. Ravi was forced to leave his kingdom and go into exile. He wandered the land, alone and without power, until he finally realized that the true source of power was not in being the one that people depended on, but in being the one that helped people become self-sufficient. And so, Ravi dedicated the rest of his life to teaching people how to be independent and self-reliant. He built schools and hospitals, and he helped people learn how to farm and trade. He became known as the prince who had learned from his mistakes and had become a true servant of the people. In the end, Ravi realized that the true power lay not in keeping people dependent on you, but in helping them become strong and self-sufficient. So recap, law number 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. This law advises people to cultivate a sense of dependence in others, as it can increase one's power and influence. By positioning oneself as a valuable resource or indispensable asset, one can create a sense of loyalty and dependence in others, making it easier to achieve their goals. This law is a reminder of the power of leverage and the importance of being proactive in building strong relationships in the pursuit of power. However, it also warns of the dangers of becoming too controlling and the need to balance dependence with independence. Law number 12. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. Once upon a time, there was a young man named Alex who had just started his career as a software engineer. He was bright, ambitious, and eager to climb the ladder of success. Alex was working at a big tech company, and he quickly realized that there was a lot of competition for the top positions. He wanted to stand out and be noticed, but he didn't know how. That was when he stumbled upon the 12th law of power: use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. Alex realized that if he wanted to get ahead in the company, he needed to make himself stand out from the other employees. He needed to be seen as trustworthy and generous, someone who was always willing to help others. And so, he began to use selective honesty and generosity to disarm his colleagues. Whenever someone asked for his help, he would give them just enough information to make them feel like he was on their side, but not enough to give away any of his own secrets. He would also offer to help his colleagues with their work, even when it meant putting in extra hours of his own time. He would never ask for anything in return, but he knew that his generosity would be remembered. As Alex's reputation grew, he began to be seen as someone who could be trusted with confidential information. His colleagues would confide in him and seek his advice on important matters. But Alex knew that he needed to be careful. He couldn't let his guard down, or he risked revealing too much information about himself. He continued to use selective honesty and generosity, always being careful not to reveal too much. Over time, Alex began to rise through the ranks of the company. He was promoted several times, and he became one of the most respected engineers in the company. But Alex never forgot the 12th law of power. He knew that his success was due in large part to his ability to disarm his colleagues with his honesty and generosity. And so, he continued to use these tactics throughout his career, always being careful not to reveal too much. He knew that the business world was full of people who would do anything to get ahead, and he was determined to stay one step ahead of them. In the end, Alex became the CEO of the company. He had worked hard, and he had used the 12th law of power to his advantage. But he had also learned an important lesson, that true success comes not just from using tactics, but from being a person of integrity and character. As it states in law number 12, use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. This law advises people to use honesty and generosity strategically, as they can be powerful tools for gaining the trust and admiration of others. By selectively revealing one's flaws or weaknesses and being generous in certain areas, one can disarm potential victims, making it easier to gain power and influence over them. This law is a reminder of the importance of being strategic in one's interactions with others, and the power of vulnerability and generosity in the pursuit of power. However, it also warns of the dangers of being too manipulative and the need to balance honesty and generosity with integrity and authenticity. Law number 13. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest. In a small village in ancient China, there was a wise old man named Li who had mastered the 13th law of power. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest. Li had lived in the village for many years and was known for his wisdom and knowledge. One day, the village was hit by a severe drought, and the crops began to wither and die. The villagers were worried, and they turned to Li for help. Li knew that he needed to act fast if he wanted to save the crops. He decided to use the 13th law of power and appeal to people's self-interest to get the help he needed. Li went to each of the villagers and asked for their help. He told them that if they helped him, they would benefit in the long run. He explained that if they worked together to save the crops, they would have enough food to last through the winter, and they wouldn't have to worry about starvation. The villagers were hesitant at first, but Li was persuasive. He told them that if they didn't work together, they would all suffer the consequences. He appealed to their self-interest, reminding them that they all needed to eat and survive. Li also appealed to the villagers' sense of community. He told them that by working together, they would strengthen their bonds and become closer as a community. He reminded them that they were all in this together and that they needed to support each other. Slowly but surely, the villagers began to listen to Li's words. They realized that he was right and that they needed to work together to save the crops. They began to work tirelessly, day and night, to water the fields and tend to the crops. Li supervised the work and made sure that everyone was doing their part. He encouraged them when they were tired and reminded them of the long-term benefits. In the end, the villagers' hard work paid off. The crops began to flourish, and they were able to harvest enough food to last through the winter. The villagers were grateful to Li for his wise words and leadership. They realized that by appealing to their self-interest, Li had motivated them to work together and save their community. Li had demonstrated the power of the 13th law of power, and the villagers had learned an important lesson, that sometimes, appealing to people's self-interest can be a powerful motivator for change. Law number 13 recap. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest. This law advises people to frame their requests for help in a way that benefits the other person, as it can increase the likelihood of receiving assistance. By highlighting how the other person stands to gain from helping, one can create a sense of motivation and reciprocity, making it easier to achieve their goals. This law is a reminder of the power of persuasion and the importance of understanding human psychology in the pursuit of power. However, it also warns of the dangers of being too self-centered and the need to balance self-interest with empathy and consideration for others. Law number 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy. In the land of Valoria, there was a powerful queen named Natasha. She had been ruling for many years and had amassed a great deal of wealth and influence. However, her power had made her paranoid and suspicious of everyone around her. One day, Natasha decided to put her trust to the test by inviting her most trusted advisor, a man named Julian, to a private meeting. Julian had served the queen for many years and had always been loyal to her. However, Natasha had begun to doubt his intentions and wanted to ensure that he was truly on her side. During the meeting, Natasha posed as a friend to Julian, expressing her admiration for his intelligence and loyalty. She then revealed that she had heard rumors of a plot to overthrow her and that she suspected Julian might be involved. Julian was taken aback by the queen's accusations. However, he knew that the queen was paranoid and that any attempts to prove his innocence would only make matters worse. Instead, Julian decided to use the Queen's suspicion to his advantage. He feigned guilt and remorse, telling the Queen that he had indeed been approached by a group of rebels who had promised him great rewards if he helped them overthrow her. Natasha was pleased to hear Julian's confession. She felt that her suspicions had been confirmed and that she had been right to doubt his loyalty. She then offered Julian a deal: if he would help her catch the rebels, she would spare his life and even promote him to a higher position in her court. However, Julian only pretended to be on the Queen's side while also posing as a friend to the rebels in order to gain their trust and learn their plans. He then used this knowledge to help the Queen catch the rebels and secure her power. Julian was successful in catching the rebels, and Natasha rewarded him as promised. Julian had mastered the 14th law of power: pose as a friend, work as a spy. He had used deception to gain the trust of both the rebels and the Queen, and had used their suspicions to his advantage. In the end, Julian became one of the most powerful advisors in the Queen's court, using his intelligence and cunning to further his own ambitions. Natasha remained unaware of his true intentions, believing him to be a loyal servant to the end. The lesson to be learned from Julian's story is that power can be gained through deception and manipulation, even if it means pretending to be someone we are not. However, we must also be careful not to let our desire for power and influence cloud our judgment, as it did with Natasha. Recap law number 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy. This law advises people to feign friendship and loyalty to their enemies or rivals while secretly gathering information or plotting against them. It encourages individuals to be cunning and deceitful in their pursuit of power, using trust and friendship as a means to gain an advantage over others. This law may seem manipulative and dishonest, but it reminds us that power is often won through strategy and deception. By posing as a friend, individuals can gain access to valuable information and opportunities, making it easier to achieve their goals. However, it also warns of the dangers of becoming too consumed by deception and the need to balance loyalty with strategic thinking. In the end, this law reminds us that power is a game of strategy, and those who are willing to play it can come out on top. Law number 15. Crush your enemy totally. In the city of Alba, there was a young man named Marco who had recently inherited his family's business. Marco was ambitious and had a natural talent for business, but he lacked the connections and influence to truly succeed in the competitive world of commerce. One day, Marco attended a party hosted by a wealthy nobleman named Baron Rodriguez. The Baron was known for his lavish parties, where the most powerful and influential people in the city gathered to socialize and network. At the party, Marco noticed that many of the other guests were exchanging business cards and engaging in conversation about their respective ventures. However, Marco had no cards to offer and no noteworthy accomplishments to speak of. Feeling out of place and unsure of how to make an impression, Marco decided to turn to the 15th law of power: crush your enemy totally. He spotted a rival named Antonio, who had been undercutting his prices and stealing his customers. Without hesitation, Marco approached Antonio and engaged him in conversation. He pretended to be friendly and even offered to collaborate on a business venture. However, as they spoke, Marco subtly worked to undermine Antonio's reputation. He spread rumors about Antonio's business practices and made snide comments about his lack of success. He also made sure to be seen socializing with other influential guests, drawing attention away from Antonio and making him seem insignificant. Over the next few weeks, Marco continued to employ his tactics. He spread rumors and undermined Antonio's reputation, slowly but surely chipping away at his business and his influence. Soon, Antonio was out of business, and Marco had gained many of his former customers. Marco had used the 15th law of power to crush his enemy totally and gain the upper hand in the world of commerce. However, Marco soon learned that the 15th law of power can have unintended consequences. The other merchants in the city had seen how ruthless he could be and began to view him with suspicion and fear. They were hesitant to do business with him, fearing that they too might fall victim to his tactics. Marco had gained the upper hand, but he had also lost the trust and respect of his peers. He realized too late that the 15th law of power could only take him so far, and that true success in business required more than just ruthless ambition. The lesson to be learned from Marco's story is that power should be used with caution. While crushing your enemy may bring short-term gains, it can also have long-term consequences that may harm your reputation and relationships with others. True success requires not just ambition and strategy, but also trust, respect, and integrity. Law 15. Crush your enemy totally. This law advises people to take extreme measures to destroy their enemies, leaving no chance of retaliation or revenge. It encourages individuals to be ruthless and merciless in their pursuit of power, showing no mercy or compassion towards those who stand in their way. While this law may seem harsh and cruel, it reminds us of the brutal reality of the game of power, where weakness and hesitation can lead to defeat. By crushing their enemies completely, individuals can ensure their dominance and security, protecting themselves from future threats. However, it also warns of the dangers of becoming too consumed by power and the need to balance ruthlessness with wisdom and strategic thinking. In the end, this law reminds us that power is not for the faint of heart and that sometimes, the price of success is high. Law number 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. There was a powerful king named Frederick who ruled with an iron fist. He was feared and respected by all who knew him, and his word was law. However, despite his power, King Frederick was deeply unhappy. He longed for someone to share his life with, someone who would love him for who he was and not just for his position of authority. He searched high and low for a woman who could fulfill this role, but none of the eligible princesses or noblewomen in the kingdom caught his eye. One day, King Frederick attended a ball hosted by the Duke of Burgundy. There, he met a beautiful woman named Isabella. She was not of noble birth and had no connections to the royal court, but her beauty and charm caught the king's attention. He approached her and asked her to dance. As they danced, King Frederick realized that Isabella was exactly what he had been looking for. She was kind, intelligent, and had a spark of defiance that he found irresistible. However, there was a problem. Isabella was already engaged to another man, a powerful nobleman named Count Rodrigo. King Frederick knew that if he pursued Isabella, he would be going against the 16th law of power, use absence to increase respect and honor. He decided to play it cool and wait for the right opportunity to make his move. He knew that if he pursued Isabella too aggressively, it would only make her feel uncomfortable and put her off. Over the next few weeks, King Frederick strategically made himself scarce. He declined invitations to social events and avoided any situation where he might run into Isabella. This only increased her curiosity about him and made her wonder why he was avoiding her. Eventually, Count Rodrigo broke off his engagement with Isabella. King Frederick saw this as his opportunity and wasted no time in making his intentions known. He courted Isabella with flowers, gifts, and grand gestures, and soon they were inseparable. The people of the kingdom were shocked that the powerful king had fallen in love with a commoner, but they could not deny that Isabella was a perfect match for him. They were married in a grand ceremony, and Isabella became the Queen of Aragonia. King Frederick had used the 16th law of power to his advantage. By using absence to increase respect and honor, he had created an air of mystery around himself that made Isabella curious and attracted to him. He had also avoided the appearance of being too eager or desperate, which could have put her off. The lesson to be learned from King Frederick's story is that sometimes, playing hard to get can be the best strategy. By using absence to create an air of mystery and intrigue, you can increase your allure and make people more interested in you. However, this should be done with caution and in moderation. Too much absence can make people lose interest or think that you are not interested in them. So as it states in law number 16, use absence to increase respect and honor. This law advises people to strategically create distance and scarcity, making themselves less accessible to others. It encourages individuals to cultivate an air of mystery and desirability by selectively withdrawing their presence, thereby increasing the value and respect they receive from others. This law may seem counterintuitive, but it reminds us of the power of longing and anticipation. By creating a sense of absence, individuals can make themselves more intriguing and sought after, elevating their status and influence. However, it also warns of the dangers of becoming too aloof and distant, emphasizing the need to balance absence with genuine connection and engagement. Ultimately, this law teaches us that sometimes, stepping back can propel us forward, gaining the admiration and reverence of those around us.
This concludes this week's episode of the 48 Laws of Power. Which law did you resonate with the most? Or is there a law you disagree with? Let us know in the comments below. And remember to subscribe and turn on your notifications for next week's episode. Until then, embrace your metamorphic tenets to transform.